Earth, a faded blue dot in the universe, gathers the necessary conditions for life as we know it. The accurate proximity of this terrestrial sphere to the Sun makes it possible that a diverse group of organisms living on the surface capture its energy, and from there, everything begins. The green color of plants is not a whim of nature, but it is due to a chemical substance that has a disproportionate power because thanks to it, the sun energy is fixed to ecosystems through their leaves, and consequently, the atmosphere is filled with oxygen. In the biosphere, countless species survive and conform an intricate web which is incredibly diverse in tropical regions. Costa Rica has an extraordinary biodiversity due, among other factors, to its privileged position in the Central American isthmus, where the two Americas converge. In addition, its landscapes replete with mountains, valleys, and shorelines provide a variety of habitats that harbor a high number of organisms from the 5 kingdoms of life. Ecological processes take place in ecosystems in an uninterrupted and circular manner. The flow of matter and energy begins with the producing organisms and pass through several levels until the decomposers, which make possible the constant recycling of nutrients and from which the cycle begins again. Death is necessary for life to exist, and it's nothing more than the transformation of matter and energy. The producing organisms capable of performing the process of photosynthesis, among them the plants, some bacteria and protists, are responsible for providing food to other organisms in the trophic chains. Then, they will be the meal of many herbivores that need to fulfill their basic needs. Among them, the zooplankton in the oceans, insects, birds, deer, and many others will look for food through the producers. Subsequently, the transfer of matter and energy continues through a variable amount of links depending on the ecosystem. The herbivores will be the food of predators, following the super predators, and these last will eventually succumb to the decomposers, bacteria, and fungi. Without them, the organic components would remain permanently trapped in the dead organisms, and the matter would cease to circulate at some point. Thus, it is essential to recognize the extraordinary work of the decomposers in the trophic chains, which perform an almost invisible task but fundamental, through which the cycle of life renews itself once again. Across the food webs, we can observe different types of interactions between organisms. Some of these are antagonistic, where there is one winner and one loser of the relationship, such as in predation and parasitism. Predators fulfill the important function of regulating populations of the species that are their prey. Consequently, in the absence of them, certain species may increase disproportionately their populations, causing an imbalance in ecosystems. In other antagonisms, even the two species are adversely affected, as in competition. For example, it is likely that plants growing very close one from the other have to compete for the resources they need, such as sunlight, water, and nutrients. But there is not always conflict of interest in nature. In order to survive, organisms often have to reach an agreement where both can benefit from a relationship. This is the case of mutualistic interactions such as pollination and seed dispersal, where the two species gain from each other. In pollination, insects and vertebrates obtain food through nectar or pollen at the same time that they contribute to plant reproduction. In seed dispersal, frugivores transport their seeds and deposit them, usually through their feces, away from the mother plant. The seeds will germinate if environmental conditions are favorable. These two processes are key for plant reproduction and then for the forest maintenance. In both antagonisms and mutualisms, the relationship between the two species have been refined over extended periods of time, usually by co-evolutionary processes where both species evolve together, fostering high levels of biodiversity. Human beings have become the dominant species to disperse over the Earth in an accelerated manner. As a result, we stand out from all other species due to the disproportionate and increasing use of the planet's resources. Conquests in the field of technology and advances in science have been a decisive factor in the transition to a world dominated by our species, to the point that the relationship has been inverted. We no longer have to adapt to the environment, but we adapt the environment to our needs. This process of cultural evolution implies advantages, but also disadvantages for the planet. In the last few centuries, human beings have converted natural ecosystems into lands for agriculture, livestock, and the development of cities. In addition, resource extraction timber has been a major cause of species habitat reduction. In the decades of 1970s and 1980s, Costa Rica had one of the highest deforestation rates in Latin America. Other factors of great concern are pollution, species traffic, the introduction of exotic or invasive species, and climate change. The increase in the concentration of greenhouse gases since the industrial era has led to the problem of global climate change. One of the main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, is being generated in great proportion from anthropogenic activities. The transport and agriculture sectors in Costa Rica are among the main responsible for the country's greenhouse gas emissions. Human activities have caused many species to disappear worldwide, while others are currently on the verge of extinction. Extinction is an irreversible process. Notably, each species that currently inhabits the planet is the product of thousands or millions of years of evolution. Thus, each one contains an enormous amount of information in its genetic code, molded by a huge number of natural selection events. These evolutionary mechanisms have taken place over very long periods of time, to such an extent that it becomes difficult to understand by the human mind. The extraordinary adaptation of species to their environment means that their morphology, physiology, and behavior have been carefully designed so that each species is able to subsist. Therefore, human-induced species extinction is probably the most tragic event ever, because in addition to make species disappear from the planet, it is likely that we are changing the natural course of evolution, with consequences difficult to predict for the future. Biodiversity loss is a telltale sign of the persistent imbalance between human needs and the Earth's carrying capacity. In this context, it is important to ask how the different environmental problems have been tackled in the first 20 years of the 21st century. Some approaches to face the environmental crisis are ecological agriculture to reduce pollution with toxic substances, sustainable forest management, reforestation, and the implementation of biological corridors to reduce the negative impacts of habitat loss and fragmentation on biodiversity. Moreover, alternative energies have an increasing importance and have begun to replace fossil fuels. It is crucial to migrate from a monoculture system that has led to social, environmental, and economic fragility in Costa Rica to more sustainable practices. Ecological agriculture is a system for cultivating the land based on the optimal use of natural resources without the use of genetically modified organisms or synthetic chemical products, neither for fertilizer nor for pest control, obtaining thus organic food while preserving the fertility of the soil and respecting the environment. A strategy to guarantee the correct management of natural resources in forestry exploitation to supply human needs is through forest certification, which contributes to the conservation of forests and the social, cultural, and environmental values. Forest certification assures the consumer that the wood or any other forest product comes from a forest managed in a responsible and sustainable manner. Thus, this approach grants international recognition and allows managers and owners to differentiate their products. Costa Rica became the first tropical country that has stopped deforestation and has also increased its forest cover in the national territory. In 2020, forest coverage reached 59% to the territory compared to the 47% at the beginning of the century. Reforestation and the use of alternative energies are together a powerful combination to mitigate climate change. Forests absorb carbon dioxide, the main greenhouse gas, from the atmosphere and incorporate it into their biomass through the process of photosynthesis. Alternative energies, on the other side, include those from renewable sources such as the sun, wind, and biomass, though biomass produces carbon dioxide emissions. The search for solutions to the environmental crisis must be based on cutting-edge scientific research, since it allows for developing innovative projects aiming to positively impact the environment. The Tecnológico of Costa Rica has played a central role in charting the way towards sustainability, promoting significantly the integral development of the country in accordance to environmental protection. In particular, the School of Forest Engineering has contributed enormously in many scientific fields, product of the work of 4 decades of many researchers in cooperation with the private sector and with institutional and international support. A clear example is the project known as Biogel, focused on the development of a product based on natural fibers of agriculture industrial waste to hydrate crops with water deficit. A double advantage of this approach is that we can make an efficient management of waste at the same time that we contribute with agricultural development. Another research area of great importance developed by the TEC is the production of biomass through the cultivation of microalgae with wastewaters based on high-level biotechnological processes that stand out in Central America. Thus, researchers from the School of Biology have selected and reproduced specific microalgae for different purposes, such as production of high-quality feed for livestock, biofertilizers, and oils as a source of biofuels. Thus, 155 tons of carbon per hectare and year are captured, while 100 tons of microalgae a year are produced in a very efficient way, leading to cleaning wastewaters and supporting circular economy. Consequently, the TEC plays a fundamental role in providing solutions to human-induced disturbance to the natural world, contributing with sustainable water management and reducing the use of agrochemicals and carbon emissions. This allows to advance in the development of a visionary plan that would enable Costa Rica to face the current environmental crisis in an integral manner. Similarly, researchers from the School of Forest Engineering have developed a new model for production of energy and biomaterials from forest plantation. It offers a more secure supply of biomass because it is planned and represents a more homogeneous biomass compared to the ones currently marketed, firewood, chips, and it involves planted trees that reduce pressure of using firewood in the forests. This modality is a business alternative within the forestry sector, which would give use to marginal land that is unused and thus offers an option to recover the soil, does not compete with crops or agriculture surfaces, nor does it put natural forests and protected areas at risk. Biotic impoverishment is an inevitable consequence of the use and abuse of nature carried out by our species in its rise toward a dominant position in the world. The environmental problems that affect biodiversity have their roots in our lifestyle. In other words, it is related to demographic numbers, to the way in which our species have spread throughout cities, overpopulating Earth, and with the way we have taken over the biological productivity of the planet. As a consequence, the habitat of a countless species has been drastically reduced. Our vision of life is inadequate, since we perceive ourselves as separate and independent entities from the natural environment, with the ability to control and manipulate everything that surrounds us. This perspective is the result of our outstanding condition as a species, and that positions us at the top of biological evolution. We need to urgently change our perspective on the human being-nature relationship and recognize our vulnerability. Like any other species, we are interconnected to the delicate web that conforms the biosphere.